As you may know, my close ties with Canada go back almost 4 decades, to the time when many thousands of Asian refugees from Uganda, including many Ismailis, were welcomed so generously in this society. These ties have continued through the cooperation of our Aga Khan Development Network with several Canadian institutions, including the establishment 4 years ago of the Global Centre for Pluralism in Ottawa. I had the opportunity last week to chair a highly productive meeting there of the Centre's Board of Directors. Earlier this year, we celebrated here in Toronto the foundation ceremony for the Aga Khan Museum and a new Ismaili Centre. So there are powerful chords of memory from 4 decades ago, 4 years ago, and even 4 months ago that tie me closely to Canada. I was also deeply moved by Canada's extraordinary gift to me of honorary citizenship. I always have felt at home when I come to Canada, but never more so than in the wake of this honor. And if I ever felt any trepidation about accepting this invitation, it has been significantly reduced by the fact that I can now claim, however modestly, to be a Canadian. Thank you. Many thanks go to all of you who are attending this lecture or are watching and listening from elsewhere. It is a busy autumn, I know. For one thing, I believe the undefeated Maple Leafs are playing on television at this very hour. My friends, my Canadian friends, like to tell me about a time when the Stanley Cup playoffs were in full swing, and a gentleman took his seat in the front row of the stadium, leaving a seat open next to him. His neighbor asked why such an excellent seat for such an important event was unclaimed, and the man explained that his wife normally sat there, but that she'd passed away. The neighbor expressed his sympathies, but asked whether a member of the family or another relative or friend might have been able to use the ticket. No, the man replied, they're all at the funeral. The subject of tonight's lecture may not have quite the emotional hold of the Stanley Cup, but for me, it has been a matter of immense importance. On the Iberian Peninsula, between the 8th and the 16th centuries, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish cultures interacted creatively in what was known as Al-Andalus. Remarkably, it lasted for most of 7 centuries, a longer period than the time that has since passed. The fading of Al-Andalus came as a new spirit of nationalism rose in Europe, propelled by what scholars have called a sense of imagined community. Where local and tribal loyalties once dominated, national identifications came to flourish. As we know, these nationalist rivalries eventually exploded into World War. The post-war emergence of the European Union has been a response to that history, much as regional groupings from Southeast Asia to Central Asia, from Latin America to Eastern Africa, have been testing the potential for pan-national cooperation. This brings me to the story of Canada, shaped so fundamentally by two European cultures. This dual inheritance was an apparent weakness at one point, but it was transformed into an enormous strength, thanks to leaders like La Fontaine and Baldwin, as well as those who shaped the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in 1982, and so many others who contributed to a long, incremental process. That process has been extended over time to include a broader array of peoples, the First Peoples and the Inuits, and a host of new immigrant groups. I am impressed by the fact that some 44% of Canadians today are of neither French nor British descent. I am told, in fact, that a typical Canadian citizenship ceremony might now include people from 24 different countries. To be sure, the vision I am describing is sometimes questioned and still incomplete, as I know Canadians insist on acknowledging, but it is nonetheless an asset of enormous global value.
یا علی مدد به برنامه بازتاب جمعه شب خوش آمدید. من عارف ویرانی هستم، عضو پارلمان برای پارکدیل های پارک و منشی پارلمان برای وزیر عدلیه. یک استقبال گرم از اعضای جماعت، فامیل‌هایشان با عقاید و ادیان مختلف و تمام کسانی که ما را از کانادا و از سراسر جهان تماشا می‌کنند تقدیم می‌کنم. امیدوارم از این هفته لذت برده باشید و در امان بوده باشید. با پایان یافتن سال تعلیمی و همه این گرما به همه ما در کانادا، به ویژه در نیمه غربی کشور، شک نیست که تابستان فرا رسیده است. البته یک شاخصی که تابستان اینجاست و ما آن را تجلیل می کنیم روز کانادا است و امروز را بزرگداشت پنداشته و گرامی می داریم. به طور کلی این زمان کباب کردن و آتشبازی است. اما امسال سالگرد کنفدراسیون کانادا جدیدتر است و نیاز به بازتاب بیشتر دارد. واقعه اخیر فراموش شدنی نیست. زیرا تقریباً 1000 قبر بی‌نام و نشان از کودکان بومی در مؤسسات مسکونی هند در بریتیش کلمبیا و ساسکاچوان همه ما را به چالش کشیده است. این ما را وادار می کند که صادقانه درباره چگونگی ساخته شدن کانادا در دوران مدرن فکر کنیم تا درباره تجربه بومی این سرزمین بیشتر بیاموزیم و همچنان به شفافیت و پاسخگویی و عدالت متحد شویم. همانطور که همه ما روی صلح و آشتی با هم کار میکنیم، من فکر میکنم ما همچنین باید در تعمیق شکافها در جامعه من تأمل و مکث کنیم که اپیدمی در معرض آن قرار گرفته است. چه این نجات پرستی ضد سیاه‌پوستان باشد، چه احساسات ضد مهاجران که توسط کووید 19 دامن زده شده و اخیراً وحشتناکترین قتل‌های نفرت انگیز مسلمانان دیگر در لندن آنتاریو در یک اقدام اسلام هراسی از خشم. این رویدادها در مورد وضعیت چند فرهنگی، تنوع و کثرت‌گرایی در کانادا در سال 2021 به ما چی میگویند؟ چه احساس نسبت به کشورمان داشته باشیم؟ کشوری که مولانا حاضر امام از ما خواسته است که خانه خود را بسازیم. من فکر میکنم که نقطه شروع برای این بحث به تازگی در اینجا ارائه شده است که در بازتاب شب جمعه توسط محترم ارجمند ادوین کلارکسون ارائه شده بود. وقتی ایشان اینجا بودند به ما یادآوری کردند که بخش از کانادایی بودن مثل حضور در یک بوفه و برداشتن چیزی که شما انتخاب میکنید نیست، بلکه گفتند دانش بیشتر برای یک منو ثابت است و به عنوان کانادایی تمام تاریخی که ما در آن زندگی کرده ایم مسئولیت دست جمعی و همه ما است. یک تعهد مشترک، جایی که همه ما باید اشتباههای گذشته و حال را تصدیق کنیم و روی کمک به بهتر شدن با هم کار کنیم. و امشب این طوری است که ما این مناسبت را جشن میگیریم، اما در این مورد از بعضی اعضای جماعت میشنویم افرادی که کوشش کردند به کشور ما بهترین خدمات را ارائه کنند با روش‌های فوق العاده. من شخصاً بسیار افتخار می کنم که میزبان شما در این قسمت از برنامه بازتاب جمعه شب هستم. البته کار کردن برای بهتر ساختن کشورم کانادا به عنوان یک اصل مهم وظیفه من بوده که من در مورد آن در ایام جوانی با خود تعهد کرده بودم. مانند بسیاری از شما که امروز تماشا می کنید، من به همراه خانواده‌ام به عنوان پناهنده از یوگاندا وارد کانادا شدم. در زمانی که من وارد شدم، من یک کودک 10 ماهه بودم. خانواده من برای اولین بار در سال 1972 در سرک استانلی YMCA در مونتریال سکونت ورزیدند. ما بعدها در تورنتو جابجا شدیم، جایی که پدر و مادرم مانند بسیاری از خانواده‌های مهاجر برای ایجاد یک خانه در تلاش بودند، در حالی که چالش‌های زیاد را همه فامیل‌های مهاجر پشت سر گذاشتند. اما ما از فرصت‌هایی که به ما ارائه شده بود به خوبی استفاده کردیم. پس از اتمام تحصیلات کارشناسیم در دانشگاه مکگیل با کمک بورسیه تحصیلی بنیاد آقاخان و مدرک حقوقم را که از دانشگاه تورنتو حاصل کردم، من به عنوان یک وکیل قانون اساسی شروع به کار کردم به حمایت از مسائل حقوق بشر و دسترسی به عدالت. من این امتیاز را داشتم که به عنوان تحلیلگر با کمیسیون حقوق بشر کانادا در اتاوا که با سازمان ملل متحد در حال تعقیب نسل کشی در بخش جنایی بین المللی سازمان ملل متحد همکاری میکرد کار کردم. همچنان در جریان کارم در محکمه رواندا که مرا به شرق افریقا برگرداند کار کردم که به عنوان یک پژوهشگر در کمیسیون که این کمیسیون به نام کمیسیون د droit de la personne et des droits de la jeune نام داشت نیز کار کردم. در این کمیسیون به عنوان معاون وکیل عدلیه ایفای وظیفه نمودم. من همچنین بسیار افتخار می کنم که عضو فعال جامعه وسیع‌تری که فعلا در آن زندگی می کنم و سازمان‌های مختلف جامعه مدنی که در موارد همچون دسترسی به خدمات عدلی، کمک و مشاوره‌های حقوقی برای اعضای اجتماع جنوب آسیا، پناهنده‌ها، زنان مورد آزار و اذیت قرار گرفته، نهادهایی که روی امنیت غذایی کار می کردند و پرداختن به نکات سلامت روانی کار کردم و سپس تصمیم گرفتم وارد عرصه سیاست شوم و این افتخار را داشتم که از سال 2015 عضو پارلمان برای پاردیل-های پارک باشم. تغییر در قلمرو سیاسی تصمیم آسان برای من، همسرم یا فرزندانم نبود. با این حال می‌خواستم قادر به نفوذ در سیاست و کمک به ایجاد تغییرات مثبت از طریق دولت شوم. من به عقب نگاه نمی کنم. این عمیق‌ترین افتخار و امتیاز من بوده که از سال 2015 چندین نقش توسط نخست وزیر به من داده شده است. من برای اولین بار بعداً از من خواسته شد که به عنوان دبیر پارلمان به وزیر فرهنگ و هم بر حفاظت از زبان بومی و هم صلح و آشتی و برای افزایش بودجه و حمایت از کثرت‌گرایی در کانادا تمرکز کنم. اخیراً نخست وزیر مرا به عنوان دبیر مجلس به وزیر عدلیه منصوب کرد. در اینجا من روی کمک به مقابله با مسائل مثل گسترش نفرت آنلاین کار کردم. امروز همان طوری که در این نقطه در تاریخ کانادا تأمل و مکث می‌کنیم درباره اینکه چه چیزی برای آن استاده‌ایم و چه چیزی می‌توانیم ارزش بیافزاییم و چگونه همه ما مشارکت کنیم، سخنان مولانا حاضر امام را به خاطر می‌آوریم وقتی درباره ساختن جوامع مسالمت آمیز و کثرت‌گرا صحبت می‌کنند. مولانا حاضر امام به ما یادآوری می‌کند و من نقل قول می کنم. توسعه حمایت از پلورالیسم یا کثرت‌گرایی به طور طبیعی در جامعه انسانی رخ نمی دهد. این یک مفهوم است که باید هر روز در هر انجمن، در نهادهای بزرگ و کوچک دولتی و خصوصی، در سازمانهای جامعه مدنی، در هنر و فرهنگ و امور اجتماعی و در رسانه‌ها، در قانون و در عدالت، به ویژه در زمینه عدالت اجتماعی مانند صحت، امنیت، شبکه‌های ایمنی، در آموزش و عدالت اقتصادی مانند فرصت‌های وظیفوی و دسترسی به خدمات مالی، در مورد آن بحث صورت گیرد. بنابراین امشب من به شما میگویم اجازه دهید ما سفر کانادا را برای ساختن و تقویت جامعه کثرت‌گرایی خود آغاز کنیم. کاری که ما انجام خواهیم داد این است که شام امروز با داستان‌های از اعضای جماعت که به شکل فوق‌العاده به کانادا خدمت می‌کنند شروع خواهیم کرد. سپس ما برای تعامل در مراسم شهروندی کانادا حرکت خواهیم کرد که می‌دانیم بسیاری از بینندگان ما از جمله من مستقیما در آن شرکت کرده ایم و ما مثل همیشه برنامه را با پارچه‌های موسیقی به اتمام خواهیم رساند. بدون ضیاع وقت بیشتر بیایید از برخی از اعضای جماعت که خدمت خود را به این کشور اختصاص می‌دهند بشنویم.
My name is Neelam Jetta. I work for the Ministry of Culture, Multiculturalism and Status of Women in Alberta, and I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister for Status of Women and Strategic Integration. So really, I've been in government for 29 years now, and it's been service for 29 years. So once I got into the policy work, where it was actually creating policies and in serving the people, in making sure they were healthy, they had income security, looking after the most vulnerable in our population, then you felt a sense of satisfaction that you were doing something that was meaningful. You actually got to see the difference you made in the way Albertans live.
I am a justice on the Court of Queen's Bench for the province of Saskatchewan. And in Saskatchewan, and every province is a little different, but in Saskatchewan, we have different levels of court, just like they do in other provinces. In our province, we have a provincial level of court. Then we have the Court of Queen's Bench, which is the court on which I sit. Then we have the Court of Appeal. And then, of course, there is the Supreme Court of Canada. Every court has a slightly different role. For example, the provincial court, they will hear a lot more in terms of volume, but they won't necessarily hear the same types of cases. For example, they will not hear cases that involve juries. They will not hear murder type cases. Our level of court will hear those types of cases along with decisions involving family law matters, civil litigation matters, and appeals from things like arbitrations, certain panels, and certain decisions of the provincial court.
My role at Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada is Assistant Deputy Minister for Transformation, Digital Strategy and Chief Information Officer. What does that mean? That means that right now with Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, we are 95% paper-based. Our processes are cumbersome, they're complex, and they've been there for years, for many, many years. And with technology that's changing with the number of immigrants that are coming to Canada, my job as the Chief Information Officer and in charge of digital strategy and transformation is to leverage technology so that we can move away from paper and make it easier for people who want to come to Canada and to remove the backlog. So that is what an Assistant Deputy Minister does. And I have a very, very large department, and I have the mandate to move these files forward.
I'm an aerospace engineer by trade. That's how I joined the Canadian Armed Forces. So that was over 23 years ago now. The Lieutenant Colonel job really, or the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, is a senior officer rank. And typically, you make it through the ranks and you do different jobs throughout your career as you transition. But the common theme usually is following your trade. So mine is an aerospace engineer, so I'm in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and I work with aircraft maintenance in many different facets of maintenance, whether it be, just recently I came from returned from Warner Robins, Georgia, and I was a senior design engineer for the CC-177 Globemaster, which is our strategic airlift aircraft. So, that's what I did for 3 years down in Warner Robins, working collaboratively with the U.S. Air Force and some of our allies. I'm about to just go in a couple of weeks here. I'll be taking command of 14 Air Maintenance Squadron, which is a unit that supports the CP-140 aircraft, our maritime patrol aircraft here in Greenwood, Nova Scotia. And basically look after the periodic inspection for this aircraft and look after all the components that would be maintained at the second line maintenance. So kind of give you an example of a myriad of different jobs within that particular trade to give you some examples of the type of work. Certainly, as a lieutenant colonel, or in the military, you're an officer first. So I've done out of trade jobs, they call them. So certainly have been an executive assistant for the wing commander at 19 Wing in Comox on the west coast, and I've been a military observer in the Sudan. I've also been an advisor to the head of academics at Pontoon, Hawaii, which is the Kabul Air University, looking after the Afghanistan's Air Force and producing technicians and aircrew to sustain their Air Force. So I was an advisor there for 9 months with the university. So it's a myriad of different jobs, and that's what's really interesting about it in serving in this capacity, is really you get a breadth of experience in different types of jobs throughout your career, and certainly that is accompanied by many moves as well. This will be my 14th move in the Canadian Armed Forces, and I've been in 23 years. So,
Assistant Deputy Minister means that you are your Deputy Minister's right hand. And when your Deputy Minister is away, you're acting Deputy Minister and connecting with the Minister directly. And even as Assistant Deputy Minister, we are always presenting to the Minister on the best possible solutions. So we are very evidence-based, and we present to our Minister to say, here's what we think. And now more and more often, we are doing more cross-ministry initiatives. So we're presenting to more than one minister to get our point across, and in a very non-biased manner, because we are not politicians as government employees. We are public servants, and making sure that we are putting forward the best possible solutions for Albertans or Canadians, and then it becomes a political decision on what the minister or the government wants to do with the information we provided, the briefings we provided them, right?
Well, I had a lot of help from a lot of different people. We never get to where we are on our own, and in my case, I had the support of my parents. I also had the support of colleagues, and I had support of members of the judiciary. I had gotten almost 20 years of experience as a practicing civil litigator, and I felt that I could make a bigger difference and a bigger impact on the world around me as a member of the court, and so I made the decision to apply.
Right now we have one system, and the one system that we have is services the entire immigration continuum. So it doesn't just service the Immigration and Refugees and Citizenship Canada Department, and not just for processing. It is a system where Global Affairs Canada, Canada Border Services, Immigration and Refugee Board, Employment and Social Development Canada, all of these departments use our system in the processing of different files. And our clients also use that system. It's legacy. It was built before the VHS. I think it was 8-track technology that was around. It was built in that time. And so what we're trying to do now is, as we try to digitize and turn and move away from paper, what we're finding is that we're unable to move the target of moving away from paper because the legacy technology, it just can't keep up. It's not able to. We can't connect the cloud to the technology. So what we have to do is reduce the amount of cumbersomeness in the current legacy technology, while at the same time, in parallel, we're building a brand new platform that will allow us to not only digitize, but to be able to do predictive analytics, robotics, artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, and it will also allow us to be able to leverage the data that we have for in service of the people who want to come, so they only enter their data once.
My passion is aviation. That is what I always wanted to do. I remember, I always tell this story. I remember growing up in Iringa on Jamaat Street in front of my dad and mom's shop, the family shop, a hardware store that they had there. Every now and then you'd see a plane go by. It would be a Cessna, a very small plane. Not a frequent occurrence, but that would happen. And as a kid, I would be very much interested in that, and I aspired to work in aviation. So certainly, joining the Royal Canadian Air Force was a natural thing for me to pursue because it allowed me to access a career in aviation. And it allowed me to access multiple different platforms in the Royal Canadian Air Force, so the diversity of platforms. So that has been a passion, and it's kind of a dream fulfilled. And doing so while serving our country, which I think is, a remarkable opportunity, and I take it as a privilege to serve.
And so people said, hey, work for the government. It's a 5-day job, 8:50 to 4:30. It's great. And that's how I started. It was a summer job, and I was going to look at something else, but I have a degree in education from University of Toronto. And so that kind of gets your foot in the door. And I had amazing mentors, and that's the thing about any workplace. Make sure that you have some really good mentors who support you, because I had amazing opportunities. And so I became a director, an executive director really, really quickly because of the support I had. And you have to prove yourself. And I took on a lot of challenging roles, which were very across ministry. So you were using your not your authority, but your influence and your collaboration and teamwork to get initiatives completed. So then you commanded respect, and that goes a long way in government. People know about you then, and then they want you to run bigger projects. My deputy minister said, my ADM at that time said, I want you to stay and look at those bigger projects we have, which was pension policy, insurance. I had no idea about insurance. And also financial institutions, ATB, which is a Alberta bank. We govern it, we regulate it. So I learned a lot. And so it was all about regulations and policies, and I fell in love with doing policies. When Uber first came into Alberta, they came in saying, we're digital, so everything is fine. We don't need to be insured. And that's when I realized that Albertans are not safe getting into that Uber car because they're not insured. Something happens, they will not have insurance to cover any liabilities that they will face. So I was the first woman superintendent in Alberta for Treasury Board and Finance as a regulator. I put a stop to it. And it was like, wow, I'm doing something that's going to help people. But then we also put a policy in place within 6 months to make sure that Uber could operate and provide those services that everybody loved. So it was those kind of things that gave me that satisfaction that Albertans were actually I was keeping them safe, and I was doing something very beneficial for them, right? And then, status of women is close to my heart, and that ministry had opened up 3 years ago when a position for the assistant deputy minister came up. I put my hand up and I said, that's the place I want to be in, because that is where my passion is. That's where I want to help women make sure that they get the opportunities, racialized women, indigenous women, vulnerable women, how do we make sure that their needs are being met? There are so many barriers, and sometimes we come from a place of privilege and we don't see that. But having come over as a refugee and having seen my parents work really hard, it kind of, put that sense that I needed to do something for women.
As a commercial litigator in a large firm, I dealt a lot with businesses. I did not deal largely with family law matters, though I had some experience in that area. I did not have a great deal of experience in criminal law and those areas. But now I'm hearing cases where, for example, I have to decide, where is a child going to stay, or should a child be apprehended? That to me is very important work. It's work that makes a meaningful impact in a child's life, and certainly I felt that is something that I wanted to do. And so that's one of the reasons why I made the switch.
And I mentor and coach many people, and they'll often say, I want to work for government. I have an ambition to follow in the footsteps that you have. I want to become an assistant deputy minister. And I say, don't stop there, become a deputy minister. And often many of these are students. And what I say to students is that when you're in a program in the university or in college, whether you're in a co-op program or not, join the government as a student. There are various mechanisms to be able to come into the federal government as students. We want students because they bring in a fresh of breath air, and to transition from being a student into a full-time employee in the government is much easier than if you haven't gone down this path in this process. And the second advantage is, if you're a student and you come in, it's a testing ground. You can learn, is public service and life in federal government what I want? And as a student, it'll help you to determine whether it is or it isn't. So it's a good testing ground as well.
The consideration for the Air Force really, when we first came to Canada, that was in 1993, and it was just looking for opportunities. I didn't know I was going to join the Canadian Armed Forces, to be honest with you. And I recall my brother, Rahim, showing me the advertisement for the Royal Military College. And I started reading the pamphlet, and then that pursued to look into it a little bit more and look at the types of trades and employment opportunities. And I discovered the opportunity to become an aerospace engineer, and I started to do a little bit more research on that particular trade. And in fact, I recall going to the recruiting center. I was so keen to become part of the Royal Canadian Air Force. At the time, it was just the Canadian Air Force. Certainly, I went into the recruiting center, and I didn't even have my Canadian citizenship at the time. So I was at about a 3-year mark. And at the time, I was also enrolled in, or I was just finishing up high school, and was accepted to University of Calgary. So I went into the recruiting center, and they say, the recruiter, provided the criteria, and one of them was you could not be a landed immigrant; you had to be a Canadian citizen. So I waited a year. I did a year at University of Calgary, pursuing my other passion. What turned out to be a year of waiting, really. Then finally getting accepted to the Royal Military College. So I was able to do my degree at the college, and after finishing, and all the summers were filled with getting experience in different types of platforms, which was fascinating.
And it's all about giving, and you learn though. And I'll tell you, being on those boards actually helped me to move up in my career at work. I feel that if I hadn't had those opportunities and got those competencies of presenting at boards, looking at evidence-based data to make sure that our policies were being were accurate or hitting the mark, and looking at diversity and inclusion even within Ismailis. There's a lot of diversity, and we need to look at inclusion, and kind of falls in with the work that I'm doing as well. So I always tell people that I work, who I'm mentoring, who are also working through the careers, to say you need to volunteer. You amazing competencies you learn through volunteerism, and you learn your ethics. I live by those ethics, where you have to help somebody who is less fortunate than you. And in this case, I have the opportunity not to just help one person, but a whole sector, or all the women in Alberta, right? So it's just very satisfying to do that.
I came to Canada with my parents. My father is a doctor in Ontario. My mother was his nurse for almost 50 years. I have a sister who's a doctor. I had an interest in government early. I started even in high school as sort of the class prime minister, and then I got a job working in Ottawa. And I learned about government through that while I went through undergrad and law school. And so that interest has always been there. That belief that we should get involved in our community and help out has also always been there, and was instilled sort of in me at an early age.
Life and service in the Canadian Armed Forces is certainly a team effort, and it's a family affair. And certainly my wife Amy and our young, almost 9-month-old daughter Anaya have sacrificed a lot already. Being together and moving on multiple occasions, and certainly being away from family for long periods of time. Certainly, my mom and dad and my sisters and my brother, don't see them very often, and certainly that sacrifice of not being in close proximity and being away from family on occasion really is a testament to the strength of service and recognizing the sacrifices that are involved, not just from me personally, but for the broader family. So I just wanted to make sure that that is talked about. When you do serve in the Canadian Armed Forces, it's truly a team effort and a family affair. And certainly want to thank all those that surround me to continue to serve. It wouldn't be possible without their personal sacrifice.
Ethics are ingrained in you. You grow up with, our Ismaili ethics. Do good, respect others, help others who are less fortunate than you. All those things are ingrained in you. You don't lie. Be transparent, be, collaborative. All those things are part of our fabric. And I think that's why I adjusted or adapted so well to government, because you need all those skill sets, or you need those ethics and values to be able to move in government, because you're not an activist. If you're an activist, this wouldn't work for you, because things don't happen fast. It needs to be so no Nescafe solutions. They have to be very thought out, sustainable, making sure nobody's left behind. So it's the way I was brought up.
I have been involved in local councils, in national councils. I was the president for the Council for Ottawa for a number of years. I have had the privilege to listen to some of the guidance and to deeply understand the guidance. And so when you're in federal government, regardless of which department you're in, having that backdrop and having that understanding of some of the issues and some of the areas of concern for the Jamaat as a whole, and for the community outside of the Jamaat as a whole, is so powerful. and you take the seat at the table, and you bring all of these experiences with you to the table, and you use them to ensure that you are able to influence the policy making or the decision making for the benefit of the community at large. So it played a very, very huge role for me.
I find the aspects of service are very much ingrained within the Canadian Armed Forces, and particularly, reiterating the time that we spent in the Sudan and some of the incredible work that happened. That was incredibly enriching, but also, I believe, aligned with our practices in our faith, right? Trying to help where we can and serve those communities. I recall because we were the first observers going in there after a 40-year civil war, right? So it was a ravaged country at the time, and there was some significant infrastructure challenges and some challenges with just access to water, having roadways and medical access, obviously. Those challenges, and being able to impactfully provide those surveys. So one of the roles was to help the arms of the development network within the United Nations and other NGOs in the area to help them access some of those communities, but also to understand what the needs of those communities were.
There is a misconception about government workers out there that they don't really work that hard, and that's not true. Majority of the time, government staff are working very hard to get policies developed and for the betterment of Albertans or Canadians or whichever province they happen to be. And it's an amazing opportunity to be in, to be able to do that, because you're actually making an impact, not just on my life, but everybody around me and in the whole province, and making sure no one is being left behind.
What our role is in the system is to be the impartial arbitrator, to decide cases as they come before us without regard to where you come from in terms of whether you're government or whether you're a corporation or whether you're an individual. You come to our courtroom, you get an equal footing. And that's important because, of course, not everybody will have the same resources when they come to court, which is why, for example, in the criminal context, the standard for conviction is so high, because we recognize that. And then the role of the judge is to decide those cases. And sometimes that means even making decisions that will upset the people that appointed us. But that's our job. It is our job to listen to those cases, determine the facts, and apply the law to those facts.
I'm hoping, especially in this portfolio that I have, which is Status of Women and Multiculturalism, is to be able to come up with some policies and strategies that will be sustainable and help us through this very difficult phase we're going through, where there's so much racism. How do we work together? And how do we collaborate better? And how do we use a diversity and inclusion lens everywhere, not just little pieces, but in every policy that we create. So we work very hard as Status of Women to educate other ministries and their staff on when they're making policy or developing policy, to bring that lens of diversity and inclusion and gender analysis to everything that they're doing, so that no one gets left behind.
I believe that my role with Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada is going to have a huge impact. Because if you look at the trajectory of the number of immigrants that we're letting into the country, we're bringing into the country, it's been growing. It's been growing quite a bit, and I don't think it's going to stop. And so to be able to improve the processes, to be able to make it easier, to be able to take a client view of it on what can we do to make it easier for clients to be able to apply, to shorten the time frames from application to decision to folks landing from 2 and 3 and 4 years to 2 and 3 months. Is going to be, I think, significant for people who are in other parts of the world for whom the day-to-day survival is difficult, and if a decision is made faster on their files and they're able to leave the situation that they're in and come to Canada to safety, that's people's lives that are impacted. That's one. The second is when they arrive in Canada, where the work that we do from an Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada perspective is we work with service provider organizations like United Way and other immigration organizations. And how can we make it better for folks so that they can get to learn the language, they can get to a point where they become self-sustaining quite quickly and quite fast.
I must admit, I don't think about it in terms of, what am I going to be thought of centuries from now? Am I going to be a Lord Denning who is often quoted or not? I really think about it in terms of the individual person that comes before the courtroom. That person, to them on that day, their case is the most important case. And I want to try and hear what they have to say, what their concerns are, determine those facts and arrive at a just result that applies the law to those facts. And so I view my impact as one case at a time. Each case that comes before me is important and is deserving of that attention and that level of analysis.
It is a question I reflect on a lot. What impact will my service have on the country and on the Canadian Armed Forces? I look at that much more now as 23 years of service than I did when I first started. Is what impact and what legacy do I want to leave? When I first started as a first-line engineering officer in 407 Squadron in Comox, right away it was evident what the impact was. We were doing these drift net fishery patrols as part of the United Nations moratorium, Operation Driftnet, against driftnet fisheries, which are quite damaging to the environment. And I felt that the aspect of the role that we had as a maintenance officer supporting the surveillance asset that would deploy to some of these locations would have an impact on enforcing that moratorium, or the anti-piracy missions that the aircraft was part of, and so there are many roles that this aircraft plays, and other platforms as well. People
tend to say that if I only have a little bit of time to serve in the community, and that's okay. But serve in the community, whether it's with the Jamaat, whether it's with Jamaati institutions, whether it's outside of the Jamaat with organizations such as United Way or others, serve. The reason I say that is simply because not only do you get the skill sets and the knowledge, but you build your networking. People will get to see you. People will get to know you. And you also tend to understand, all of the empathetic things that I use right now at my work in improving, the way people are treated, the leadership aspects of things. It's I didn't learn that at work. I learned that with my community service. I learned that when I met with, I was a member for settlement. And so when the first refugees from Afghanistan came, I saw firsthand what their needs were, what they went through, how scared they were, but how happy they were at the same time. So I would say to folks, get involved, because when you do that work and you jump into the public service, it transitions itself extremely well. Once you're in the public service, then be committed to the service of public. That's what we do. That's what public servants are. It's to make lives of our citizens better, and to protect their health and safety. Take that mandate, because as Ismailis, we can give a lot, and the values and the ethics and the morals that we bring are ones that people will learn from us by watching us. And I think that's important.
چه داستان‌های واقعاً قابل توجه و شگفت‌انگیز. بسیاری از اسماعیلیان در حال رسیدن به قله‌های موفقیت و قادر به کمک به خانه ما در چنین شیوه‌های منحصر به فرد که واقعاً الهام بخش است کار کرده‌اند. همان طوری که به روز کانادا فکر می‌کنیم، من به روز فکر می‌کنم که یک شهروند کانادایی در سن 6 سالگی شدم و جایی که پدرم مرا از مکتب بیرون آورد و بعد مجبور شد اسنادهایم را از طرف من امضا کند چون قلم من خراشیده بود. من می‌دانم که این یک تجربه برای بسیاری از اعضای جماعت است که آنها به کانادا از کشورهای مختلف چون یوگاندا، آفریقا، شرق افریقا، افغانستان، تاجیکستان، سوریه، هند، پاکستان یا بسیاری از کشورهای دیگر که جماعت متنوع ما از آنها سرچشمه می‌گیرند آمدند. به عنوان یک عضو پارلمان من همچنین این امتیاز را داشتم که میزبان بسیاری از مراسم شهروندی کانادا باشم. از جمله بعضی از آنها در نوشته‌های من از پارکدیل-های پارک اینجا در تورنتو در خود کانادا اشتراک کردم. می توانم با صداقت کامل بگویم که این یکی از برجسته های کار من به عنوان یک نماینده مجلس است تا شادی، امید، قدردانی تازه واردانی را که انتخاب را برای نامیدن کانادا خانه جدید خود ساختند ببینم. اما چیزی که من به هر یک از آنها در هر مراسم میگویم چیزی است که به همه شما خواهم گفت. کانادا یک ملت بزرگ است، ملتی از مردم عادی که کارهای خارق العاده انجام میدهند، چون کانادایی ها به کمک به یکدیگر اعتقاد دارند برای پیشرفت و این وظیفه ماست که به این کار ادامه دهیم. من فکر میکنم هرگز پیش از این بیماری همگیر ما شاهد این اخلاق و ارزش کانادا بودیم و در آینده هم به درخشیدن ادامه خواهیم داد. با تلاش کانادایی ها برای حمایت از همسایه ها، سالمندان، کسانی که در جامعه خود نیاز دارند، من فکر می کنم همه جماعت برای این که در این تعهد ثابت قدم هستند، این خدمت در طول 15 ماه گذشته، این سخاوت حقیقتاً چیزی است که کانادا و شهروندانش را تعریف می کند. بیایید اکنون به نوبه خود به یک لحظه به تأمل در مورد این مراسم شهروندی و اهمیت آنها توجه کنیم.
I swear
that I will be faithful
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty
Queen Elizabeth II,
Queen of Canada,
her heirs and successors, and that I will faithfully observe the laws of Canada,
including the Constitution,
which recognizes and affirms the Aboriginal and treaty rights of First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples, and fulfill my duties as a Canadian citizen.
as a Canadian citizen.
as a Canadian citizen.
بسیار تشکر. آن بازتاب‌ها در مورد شهروندی بسیار قدرتمند و الهام بخش بود. قبل از رفتن به بخش بعدی، 5 جولای آغاز کمپاین سالانه فوکس استار را خواهیم داشت. موضوع امسال این است که برای هر چیزی، حتی آینده آماده باشیم. با اینکه جهان همچنان با اثرات ویروس ویروس کووید 19 دست پنجه را نرم می کند و با ادامه این بیماری بلاهای طبیعی و بحرانهای پناهندگان که بسیاری از برادران و خواهران اسماعیلی ما را در سراسر جهان به طور روزانه تحت تاثیر قرار می دهد. من فکر می کنم کار فوکس حتی بحرانی تر شده است. در اینجا در خانه فوکس همچنین بسیاری از برنامه ها را در بسیاری از منابع موجود از طریق ابتکار آینده آماده می کند. از جمله حمایت از چیزهای مانند صحت روانی، توسعه مهارت‌های شغلی، مربیگری جوانان و راهنمایی خانواده. خودم به عنوان یک پناهنده مانند بسیاری از کسانی که ما را می‌بیند می‌دانم که چگونه این ورزش ها می‌تواند برای بهبود کیفیت زندگی شما و خانواده شما حیاتی باشند و امیدوارم شما بتوانید از این کار بسیار ضروری حمایت کنید. شما می‌توانید اطلاعات بیشتر را در وبسایت iicanada.org بیابید. ما در حال حاضر طبق معمول برنامه را با پارچه‌های موسیقی پایان می‌دهیم. من تا به حال یک زمان بسیار فوق‌العاده از میزبانی با شما داشتم و امیدوارم که هر یک از شما در امان و سالم باقی بمانید. هفته فوق‌العاده داشته باشید. تشکر.
तन मन धन दीजे मोरे सैया को कहने को अमानी
We move in the world like water over concrete, subtly confused far away. The moral soil that nurtures our condition deep beneath a grim city gray. A struggling plant through a crack in the pavement, working quietly to give fruit. In the name of Kareem, commander of the faithful, he is where my hope takes root. With saltwater dreams, remembrance of idle talk. Oh yeah, yeah. I will find my way to the sea, long as I have you with me. I will find my way to the sea. I have you with me, more than say no.
मन धन दीजे मोरे सैया को तन मन धन दीजे मोरे सैया को
The ancient ice, secrets that are fading, melting in the rising tide. The words of the wise, simply entertaining, falling on the deaf and blind. But there's a vibrancy in the deep frequency, awakening is under